Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program with Coach Menachem Berfel. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful New Year's Eve. Instead of being in Times Square tonight, you're here with us in our warm Zoom so we can get all warm together, learn something, some education. And we're going to end off the year 2023 with some paradox psychology with Dr. Eliot Kaplan. And hopefully by the end of the night, you'll be drunk. Same thing as being in Times Square, so we'll be good. We'll be equal. So again, we start off first thanking all the people for joining us for the past 4 years and letting people know about it and for viewing it and for posting it on the WhatsApps, on the WhatsApp statuses, emailing it to friends and colleagues and people, and we'll try to grow together. Somebody texted me the Shana Tova, right? It's not New Year, it's Rosh Hashanah, right? No, we got it. Somebody's clarifying to me. Thank you. I didn't know that it wasn't Rosh Hashanah. Thank you. Thank you for posting and let people know and join. And if anybody wants to join our WhatsApp statuses to get the information, please text me and WhatsApp me at 848-525-0066 or go to menachemberfel.com. You can sign up every Sunday for his flyer and information and for all the information that's regarding Coach Menachem. So thank you for joining us. For all the people that are watching the replay of this on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button or the like button so that you get to see when you subscribe every week when Menachem uploads the videos. You could watch them as they come out. Usually it's Monday early morning after we're done the program. So please sign up. Again, I want to thank all the advertising sponsors that promote us, the Lakewood Scoop here in Lakewood, Eliot and Ariel from 5 Town Central, and Chayla Kaufman from JCN, from the Jewish Contact Network, promoting it on all the Jewish digital platforms. So again, anybody's here the first time, every Sunday at 9:30 on the Zoom ID, we have different topics, we have different therapists, different rabbonim, different dynamic people that try to bring across their points and knowledge and to help us open our minds to new concepts, new ideas. And it seems interesting that we're ending the year with Dr. Eliot. Just interesting because it's going to be something different and hopefully we'll gain from it. And let's see what he has to say. So we're very excited. Menachem, the first shir of 2024 is going to have with Rebbe Daniel Gladstein, who's a brilliant Talmid Chacham. I think he has the most shiurim on Torah anytime he speaks on basically any topic, any and every topic. So he's amazing. And we're going to discuss a little bit. He just came out with a new book about the Holy Tana Reb Meir Baal HaNes, and he's trying to bring out from the book. We're going to title it The Worldwide View of the Holy Tana Reb Meir Baal HaNes and Hashem's Infinite Love for the Jewish people in today's day and age. So it should be a very deep and powerful program. Please join us, Rebbe Daniel Gladstein. He's unbelievable. And it should definitely be something very interesting. Tonight, we have the schus and the honor of having world-famous therapist, speaker, Dr. Eliot Kaplan, PhD, who saved many relationships, dealt with some difficult clients over the years, and definitely has a reputation in the therapeutic circles of being a little bit out of the box. So I got a few messages that he's definitely out of the box and his methods are a little bit different. And, Dr. Eliot, we've done already 4 years of different therapeutic topics, and, a lot of them are repetitive, but we need sometimes a new flavor, you know what I mean? So hopefully you'll be that new flavor. So first we're going to start off with our CEO, Coach's best friend. He's with Coach Menachem because I'm not around. He usually comes to me because he likes me better, but I happen not to be around. I'm traveling, so he's going to, he's going to the other team right now. So Coach Arnoyach Fried, he found tonight's topic to be very hard to give a gematria, but with Hashem's help, with God's help, he came up with a beautiful numeric gematria for the shir, and let's see if it fits in. Arnoyach, take it away.
Zoom share 169, Paradox Psychology, world's most controversial therapy for the most difficult clients. You're dealing with difficult clients, you need a lot of wisdom and understanding. B'siyat d'shmaya, the gematria 169 is Zua Chachma v'Habina, the wisdom and understanding.
Beautiful, thank you. Hopefully that we'll find out if it's Chachma and Bina. Okay, Coach Menachem, open it up. Why are we here tonight, New Year's Eve, at 9:40 p.m. on Eastern Time to sit here with Dr. Eliot? What are we trying to gain? What's the topic? Let's go, bring it out.
Shkoyach Arnoyach, the beautiful gematria. Yeah. So welcome everyone to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem. And tonight with Siyata D'Shmaya 160, what 68 or 69? 169.
169.
169, Baruch Hashem. And like we heard, it's going to be a little bit different. And Baruch Hashem, I want to thank all of you who sent the feedback about last week with Mordechai Weinberger. It was very interesting the way he set it up, the dynamic of the feedback of all of us, and I got a lot of feedback of people who really enjoyed it. So thank you for that. And the recordings are always available for those who didn't hear it.
I just want to mention one other thing on that topic. Mordechai is actually writing a book, and it's coming out hopefully in the next few months. And when the book comes out, he said he wants to come back and really just go to the next level with
He's always welcome back.
Yeah. Sorry,
So yes, like we heard, we're doing this almost 4 years, and a lot of different concepts, ideas that many of us sitting here almost every Sunday night picked up. But there are those who sometimes feel that they have a certain situation in their life. Sometimes they might go to therapy or not, but they feel that they're just stuck. It's not happening. They're trying different modalities, different things. They might sit with a therapist for maybe many years, but they feel like it's not getting them the place where they want to be. The truth is, we live in a generation where there's a lot of information. We have information on our fingertips, and most people think they know. You bring up any discussion, they know about it, they can talk about it, they can discuss it. But when it comes to actual work, to something they have to implement in their own life, sometimes it doesn't go in. They're not connected to it. They stay who they are. They can talk about it. They might be able to help somebody else. But when it's personal, about themselves, information doesn't really work. Talking about relationships, struggling with relationships, the information might not work. So it takes something else, something more than just knowing the steps, knowing the concepts, going to therapy and discussing the concept. It does take work and a lot of introspection, sitting there and trying to understand, why do I feel the way I feel? Why don't I want different? What do I want different? The little bit that I know about paradox psychology is that there are some people come out, very fast. They're moved and it works and they love it. Other people walk out of the room very confused. And I think that's the idea that we will be discussing tonight, is that we want to understand everything. You sit in front of the therapist, you want to understand why he's doing what he's doing, what are you talking about, why are you telling me this, how is it going to work, what method are you going to use. We're trying to use our way of thinking to understand what you're trying to say and then see if it's going to make a difference. But sometimes you have to go to a place where you've never been. You have to feel yourself where you're not even sure what you're feeling. And then you become a little bit confused. And what I would say is, if you're confused, that means it's working. So hopefully tonight we have Dr. Eliot Kaplan, Menachem, with a lot of siyata d'shmaya, to bring into the room a little bit of the wisdom, the things that he uses in his therapy room and how he's helped many, Menachem. So we should be able to use this for ourselves wherever we are. Menachem.
Coach Menachem, beautiful opening. Okay, let's get into it. So here we go. Tonight's share, we titled it Paradox Psychology, the world's most controversial therapy for treating the difficult client. That's what it's titled. And I'm going to read Dr. Eliot's bio. Dr. Eliot Kaplan, PhD, is the author of Paradox Psychology. It's Not What You Think, and Amazon Books, and the founder of the Asylum for the Paradox Psychology. Although popular during the 1970s, the approach was often confused with its evil twin, reverse psychology. The method tends to use absurd humor to quickly disarm habitual defenses. It is effective with addictions, BPD, OCD, and couple and family therapy. Interventions include prescribing the symptoms, positive reframing, and symptom exaggeration. While noted for its success, its underlying mechanism has always been considered a mystery until now. So, Dr. Eliot, please, we're all here. We want to hear. How many years are you doing this, first of all, before we even go started?
I think about since I was 5. I think
you were born naturally paradoxical.
That's when most therapists start, by the way. At 5 years old, you figure out how to deal with your parents, and you do a little of this to mom and a little of this to dad, and then you say, at a certain point, you say, "Oh, I can do this for a living." And
Okay, so please open it up. You know, as you know, we have a lot of questions people are going to ask you, so the floor is yours.
yeah. So the first thing I want to mention is that, you know, in coming up with the title, initially I sent Usher that it's the most controversial therapy, and I said, you know, it could sound even a little bit more interesting. I sent him an email to say, why don't we call it the world's most dangerous therapy? He didn't like that. He sent that back. He didn't want me to put that in. He didn't like the word dangerous. And then I sent him back, well, maybe we could say it's a therapy about nothing. And he didn't like that either. He said, let's just keep it what it is. Let's just keep it what it is. So, I think most people, you know, like I'm sure most people listening to this, you know, you've watched a lot of therapy programs, podcasts. I mean, let's be honest. What am I going to say that you probably haven't heard? Okay. So I'm sure that, you know, you're kind of waiting, he's going to say something, but I've probably heard of it before. And everybody's going to plug it in to what they're comfortable with. So if you're a CBT guy, you're going to plug it into CBT and see how it works with that. And if you're a behavioral person, you're going to do, you'll make it into a behavioral intervention. You're psychodynamic, you're going to figure it out how it might be psychodynamic. But the bottom line is that the paradox interventions, as Usher mentioned, were very popular in the 60s and 70s with the master therapists. We're talking about Milton Erickson, Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, Sal Minuchin. And of course they videoed these sessions that they were having, because you would literally see people change in front of your eyes. And watching those videos, you think, okay, now we have it on video. We're just gonna, you know, like deconstruct it and figure out what's happening, and you know, and then we'll know exactly what's going on, so we could teach it. The problem is that even though they had it on video, they couldn't figure out what was happening. It didn't seem to make any sense what was happening. As we're going to discuss, one of the main issues is that that in psychology, our training in school, in how we talk about psychology, everything is focused on changing behavior. Behavior, how are we going to change behavior. And ultimately, the reality is, yeah, okay, you want to change behavior. But what's a little different about paradox is that, as strange as it sounds, I don't care about behavior. That's not my focus. I talk about behavior. I will talk to the client about behavior, what's going on, what's bothering them. But really, my interest is in helping the client with a new sense of attachment, a new sense of the alliance. The focus of paradox is purely on strengthening the therapeutic alliance. And it turns out that when the therapeutic alliance is strengthened, that in and of itself will shift the behavior. So in thinking about, you know, in terms of how I'm presenting, what I'm presenting, basically you want to, people are different. You know, like a dog, you can give a reward to, your dog can give a cookie, and he's happy, you know, and he'll roll over, he'll do whatever you want. You know, it turns out that certain animals, I think research has found that ravens actually are very intelligent, and they can figure out that if there are ants under a space that they can't get into, they'll get a stick, and they'll put the stick under the space, and they'll get the ants out, and then they can eat it. But people, you know, we try to use those concepts and plug them into people, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. So the issue with, so how is man different? How is man different? It turns out that we as people are paradoxical. Our very nature, every single person is paradoxical. What does that mean? What that means is that we all have a finite body. We all have this physical finite body, and yet we have infinite potential. So generally, therapy focuses on the finite. In other words, how am I going to change that person's finite behavior? Even in terms of their thinking, how am I going to get them to think differently? In Paradox, my focus is on what I view as the infinite. And the infinite refers to the ability to join with that person. There's no limit in terms of the depth of how well I can join with a person. If you're working on behavior, the nature of the physical body can only change so much. Even a person's thinking can only conceptualize only so much. With Paradox, because I'm working on the infinite, the change, as strange as it sounds, the change actually happens without the person thinking to themselves, oh, I'm going to change right now. I'm going to do A, B, C, and D, and then I'm going to change. No. Doesn't happen that way in Paradox. It's a very exciting approach. If you watch videos, you can watch videos of Virginia Satir, Sal Menachem. It turns out, by the way, that Carl Rogers, although he's never billed as a paradoxical therapist, Carl Rogers is very paradoxical. If you ever watch Carl Rogers, I remember when I was in school and we got introduced, to the different therapists, and they showed us Carl Rogers. And what does Carl Rogers do? He sits in front of the client, and the client says something, and he basically repeats it back. Right? And the client would say something again, and so it sounds like you're feeling like this. Carl Rogers never says, oh, think of it this way. Why don't you look at it this way? Maybe if you consider it in another way of looking at it, maybe you'll see your situation differently. He never goes there. And it turns out that Carl Rogers is actually probably the original paradoxical therapist. So when working with clients, like I say, I don't tell them to change, and very often they change on their own. Now, in trying to plug in what I do, the quickest thing I'll give you an example in a second. The quickest thing you're going to say, that's reverse psychology. I got it. You're telling the client to do one thing, but really, you as the therapist want him to do something else. The problem with reverse psychology is, first of all, master therapists are never going to use reverse psychology because they're never going to manipulate a client and say that they're working with a client and manipulating anybody, because master therapists don't do that. That's not what master therapists do. So and we'll come back to this later, because a lot of what I'm going to say is kind of new. So I'll have to explain it a little, maybe in different words later. But in terms of reverse psychology ultimately is focused on changing behavior. And if you're going to tell the client, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, but really, I want you to do the opposite, then that means that my personal agenda, is that I'm trying to get the client to do something that is manipulative, that maybe they wouldn't want to do that on their own. In Paradox, when I give a client an assignment, I'm not saying it because I'm trying to manipulate them. I'm saying it because this is what you do. This is how you react. This is how you relate to your mom, how you relate to in your relationships. And maybe the first time you did it, it was a new thing to do. But when you do something over and over and over again, a habitual behavior, eventually it becomes predictable. And very often people get stuck in their predictable responses. They get stuck in predictable emotions, predictable behaviors, predictable thoughts. And they try very, very hard to get out of these predictable behaviors. And the analogy I have is that generally people assume, and it's not even we don't even question this. We don't even question this assumption in therapy anymore. We assume that therapy means that we're going to push the car up the hill. Okay, we're going to push and we're going to push, we're going to push. And eventually the hope is we're going to get to the top of the hill and we're going to be feeling better. And now our life is going to change because we got to the top of the hill. The only problem with that is that, as you can imagine, it takes time and effort to get to push the car to the top of the hill. And there are people in therapy that they do push the car, and they might push a week, they might push 2 weeks, they might push a month, they might even push 2 months. But inevitably, as people are pushing and struggling to change their behavior, there comes a point where, you know what, I've been struggling for 2 months. I just want to relax. 5 minutes. What's the big deal? 5 minutes. I'm going to get myself a Coca-Cola. I'm going to sit down under the shade. I'm going to relax 5 minutes, and then I'm going to go back to pushing. As you're under the tree, enjoying your Coca-Cola, what's the car doing? The car's starting to roll back. And not only is it starting to roll back, it's starting to get momentum rolling back. So even if you ran back to try to get it to stop, very often the car has so much momentum that now it's really rolling down the hill. It crashes into what's ever on the bottom of the hill. And to tell you the truth, everybody feels bad. The client feels bad because, you know, I was trying so hard and it didn't work. And to be quite honest, the therapist feels bad, you know, like, oh, you were trying so hard. If you would just tried a little bit more, another week, another 2 weeks, you know, you would have gotten to the top of the mountain and you would have been a different person. So the bottom line is everybody is kind of upset because, and now we basically start all over. Now we're going to start pushing the car up the hill. In my view, in paradox, you know, when people have high tension means that you're at the top of the mountain already. Okay, so if you think of water, right, if water runs down the mountain, and it's not, the water is not making an effort to run down the mountain. And the car, if I do my job right, then I start pushing the car toward the side of the hill, and the car starts to roll. And at that point, okay, client, jump into the driver's seat, and now you have the steering wheel, and now you can even put your foot on the brake. Obviously, you don't want the car to just rush down the hill. You don't want the car to speed down the hill because that's not helpful either. But as the client, if you get a sense, now you can control how fast you're going to go down that hill, how fast you're going to move toward a more relaxed state. So if you client feel that you're going too fast, you put your foot on the brake, right? But you didn't go backwards. You're not going to go backwards. You're always going to go forwards. And you can go around if there's an obstacle, you can drive around the obstacle. But what it alludes to, and again, this is kind of a radical thing to say, is that in doing paradox, change is easy. Okay, I'm going to say that again, that change happens easily. It's not work. Because I know that if the client is working to change, and that means that they're pushing the car up the hill, they're trying to do something that they may or may not be able to do. And to be quite honest, I tell this to people that I train, I as a therapist, I don't work either. I'm not working. Right? Because I simply join the client, I simply attach to the client, I simply join them in what they're doing. My job is to simply make them realize that they're bigger than they think. You know, people come in, the client has a certain ego, they have a certain image of this is who I think I am, and this is how I have to react. And my wife said this, and my mother said this, and I have to react back and forth. But really, because we're infinite, we have infinite potential. There are so many more things we can do than our habitual behaviors. So let me give you an example. Example I customarily use: you have maybe you have a young guy, a teenager comes in, and you find out that he goes home, he yells at his mother. And okay, by the way, I very often call paradox plan B. And what that means is that first I'm going to try CBT. First, I'm going to try a behavioral intervention. I'm going to try to discuss his history, his background. And when all those don't work, then I'm going to use paradox. The reality is, if I use paradox straight out, then very often people get like shaken up by it. No, I don't know what this guy's doing. I'm out of here. So okay, so I'm going to talk to the client about, did you think maybe differently when you go home? That you don't have to argue with your mom. It could be a different relationship. Also realize, behaviorally, if you had a better relationship with your mom, then maybe you would be much happier and you'd feel much better about yourself. Yeah, sure, I know that you have trauma in the background, so I understand that, but now that you know that you have that trauma that is really not part of who you are, you really can let go of this arguing that you do with your mom. Okay, and and again, we work very hard, and if that works, by the way, then we've done our job. Then if the client changes, then we're good. But very often, what happens is you did the CBT, you did the behavioral, you did the psychodynamic, and for whatever reason, they're still going home and they're arguing with their mom. So what I do with the clients is I try to find out like the details, like what's the trigger? What gets you going? You're gonna go home, like what does your mom do that really ticks you off? And the client may say, well, I go home, I just want like 10 minutes to myself, but as soon as I walk in the door, she says, well, when are you gonna take out the garbage? When are you gonna wash the dishes? And I tell her, listen, mom, just let me walk in. Give me 10 minutes to rest up, to settle down. I'll do that, but no, I want to know when you're going to wash the dishes, when you're going to take out the garbage. And wouldn't you know it, that's the beginning of a fight. So what the client has just told me, he just told me the pattern. He just told me how it works. So what I say to the client is, okay, we tried all these other therapies. Obviously, it's not working. I'll tell you what. I'm going to do a paradox intervention with you. And what we're going to do is we're going to plan, right? You and me together are going to plan that when you go home now, you and your mom will fight. Okay, that's what you're going to do. You're going to fight. We're going to decide right here what you're going to fight. You will fight. And and I know that she's going to ask you to take the garbage out. She's going to ask you to wash the dishes. And when she does that, okay, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, but I don't want to argue with her. I know that's not what you want, but that's what you do anyway. So why don't we just plan it? You and me, we're just going to plan it. That's what you're going to do. You're crazy. What kind of therapist are you? That's not helping me. Listen, I know you. You're a predictable guy. I know you're going to go home. I have confidence in you that you can do this exercise. This guy's crazy. The client goes home. He walks in the door, and wouldn't you know it, mom says, when are you taking the garbage out? When are you going to wash the dishes? Now, the old client, right, that's the trigger. Now, if I did my job right, I'm standing next to the client, and I go ahead, yell at your mom. Yell at your mom. You always yell at your mom. Go ahead. Yeah, but I don't want to yell at mom. You always yell at mom. Come on, just do it. Just do it. You always yell at her. And in that moment, the client is like, I'm not yelling at her. I'm just going to go into my room and take my jacket off. Now, what's interesting about this intervention is he didn't yell at mom. He walked away. I didn't tell him not to yell at mom. Okay, I didn't tell him don't yell at mom. I told him to yell at mom. So, okay, so as you listen to it, well, of course, so you did reverse psychology. You told him to yell at his mother because really, you didn't want him to yell at his mom. But as I said before, the problem with that is that that's a manipulation. And the reality is that on a certain level, it doesn't matter to me personally whether he yells at his mom. I'm just pointing out the pattern. This is the pattern that you guys do. This is what you've done for 3 months ago, 2 months ago, last month, last week. This is what you guys are always doing. This is nothing new. So in predicting the pattern, what I'm letting the client know is that I see you, I'm with you. And what I just did is I changed the system. And what that means is that usually when the client walks in the door, the system is him and his mother, the two of them. And even though in therapy, we talked about it, that really he shouldn't yell at his mother and he knows better, he really shouldn't. The problem is that when he walks in and it's the same system, then, they fall into the old pattern because it's the same system. But if I did my job right, that means that when the client walks in the door, I'm kind of standing next to him. So rather than 2 people walking in the door, now there's 3 people in the room. 3 people is a lot different than 2 people. And how a system reacts simply by the fact that it's a 3 instead of a 2, it immediately changes the whole dynamic. So if you get a sense, I'm not telling anybody to change, but they happen to change. This is what the system is different. I'm going to do something different. So that's basically paradox in a nutshell.
Okay, Shkaya for that opening.
Yeah.
In theory, that's all good. And now we're gonna get into it and really try to understand what you're saying in English. Sounds
Okay.
good?
Don't ask me too many questions.
Oh. Oh, you mean that's it?
What did they say? What did they say? Yeah.
You're saying the speech is it. That's it. Take it from there and run.
Right.
Okay. No, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna grill you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the concept, it sounds crazy what you just said.
I hope so.
That's right. Listen, it's
now by the way, so to recognize, hold on. So to recognize that in paradox, I call it that there's like basically 3 parts, right? So 3 pieces. One is the Carl Rogers part, which is acceptance, warmth, empathy, genuineness, unconditional positive regard. So that's kind of the Carl Rogers piece to it. So I'm giving the client unconditional positive regard. The second piece is basically Fritz Perls. I have training in Gestalt therapy. Fritz Perls was very much in the here and now. And what's powerful about the here and now is that change can only happen really in the here and now, right? It can't happen tomorrow, it can't happen yesterday. So it's a very much here and now kind of therapy. The third part, I've come to term as Bugs Bunny. And if you ever watch Bugs Bunny cartoons, Bugs Bunny is absurd. He's always doing something a little off track, and you try to keep track of what he's doing, but like at the end, he's always like, "What's up, Doc?" And the whole situation is suddenly different with Bugs Bunny. Instead of everybody jumping on him, he's on the outside going, "Yeah, how's it going? How are you guys doing? Fighting in there." So there's an absurdity to paradox, and so when you say it's crazy, I want to thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome. Okay, let's take a little break. We're gonna take a poll. We're gonna ask the crowd 3 questions. Everybody should vote. It's anonymous. And then again, like I said, we have Dr. Eliot Kaplan, who's doing this for many, many years, and he's dealt with some difficult issues and he's seen tremendous change. So let's try to figure out in your personal problems or problems that you could see how it actually play out. You know what I mean? In your situation. So let's start with the poll. It's a 3-question poll, okay? Menachem, you can see it? Okay, 3 questions. Here we go. Everybody answer. In your experience, what factor contributes the most to the effectiveness of the client therapy relationship? What's the most important factor so that you and your therapist get along? It's one of 3 options. Which one would you say would be the best? Number 1, being on the same page as your therapist. Number 2, clearly defined therapeutic goals. Or number 3, open communication and trust. What do you think would be the most contributing factor that you and your therapist could really grow together? Second question, how much effort is typically required for a client to address and overcome challenging mental health issues? So how much effort does it actually take for the client to really, if he's struggling with screaming at his mother or any other type of mental health issues, to really overcome? In your opinion, minimal effort, primarily relying on the therapist's guidance, Option 2, moderate effort involving active participation and commitment from the client. Or option 3, intensive effort involving dedicated work both inside and outside the therapy sessions. The third question, in your opinion, what factors do you believe contribute to why some individuals may not find success in standard therapy, right? We always hear all the time that I went to therapy for 20 years, I went to therapy for 10 years, and we're holding nowhere. Why would you think that would be? 4 options. Client and therapist are just not seeing eye to eye. Some people just believe that there's no real help with specific problems, right? That just whatever my issue is, it's just not really helpful with a therapist. I can't, you know. Number 3, change is so hard that talking is really not going to help. So, you know, if somebody has a bad meat or a bad trait, or they have some type of real serious thing that you could talk from today till tomorrow with a therapist, but the bottom line is just too hard to change. Number 4, incapability with the chosen therapeutic approach or methodology. That means that the approach, whether it's CBT, DBT, hypnosis, psychedelics, paradox, or whatever it is just incapable with what the person needs to accomplish to really grow. So those are the 3 questions. Answer to the best of your ability. And let's share the answers. And then Dr. Eliot, we're going to see what the people say, and then we'll get your feedback on it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay, let's give it a few seconds. People are sending in some questions over here. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, I think most people voted. Let's share it with everybody. Okay, so the first question. In your experience, what factor contributes the most effectiveness of the client-therapist relationship? And very interesting, you have a very clear answer over here. And Dr. Eliot, I want to hear your opinion. Only 6% believe being on the same page as your therapist. 70% clearly define therapeutic goals. 77% of people here tonight believe open communication and trust. That's the ikr, that's the main factor between have a good client-therapy relationship. What's your opinion on that, Paul?
Yeah. It's pretty accurate. I would say, first of all, the research shows that regardless of the modality, the most important part of the therapy is the alliance between the therapist and the client. In terms of so in other words, so if you're a thinking kind of person, then CBT might work for you, and you can connect with the therapist on that level. Whatever the therapist is doing, if it resonates with you, with the client on that level, then it could definitely be helpful. So the alliance is the number one part of therapy. What I would add to that is that the hope, and again, the assumption of a lot of therapy is that, well, for the alliance to exist, or the client's got to give 50% and the therapist will give 50% and you have 100%. There are certain clients who, because of their own trauma, they can't give 50%. They don't have the trust. They can't reach out. For some of them, they can't even give 25. So the good news of Paradox is that really, sometimes, in my own view, I'm kind of like going in after the client, because I have to find out where the client's at, and I'm not going to rely on the client to come out and bond with me. I'm going to just go in and bond with the client. And it still makes up 100%, but it turns out I might be doing 80% of the bonding.
Okay, interesting. Second question, very, very clear answer from the people. How much effort is typically required from the client to address and to overcome challenging mental health issues? Only 2% say minimal effort, primarily relying on the therapist's guidance. 27% believe it's moderate, including active participation and commitment from the client. 70% of people here believe intensive effort involving dedication and work both inside and outside the therapy sessions. What's your opinion on that, Dr. Eliot?
Propaganda. Propaganda. That's what we've been taught for since Freud. Like you got to work, you got to push that car up the hill. You got to put the effort in, and it's time, and it's and the problem is that because everybody's trying so hard to change, At the end of the day, very often change it becomes a lifetime work, and because you think you're in therapy and the change doesn't happen. In the example I gave, where I told the client that that he's expected to get angry at his mother, you can get a sense that the client didn't really, it wasn't like he thought to himself, oh, I was going to yell at her, but now I'm not. I'm going to hold myself back. I'm going to have impulse control. Not at all. It's like he just kind of recognized the pattern of where he's at, and that his therapist, that me as the therapist, was with him. It just changed his perspective of the situation. And by changing the perspective in and of itself, he was able to react differently. So at least
to
with
clarify,
that,
to recap with everybody, so far what you've said so far, just to clarify, is that since paradox therapy, it doesn't take so much 50-50 relationship because you could just be his buddy and chizik. And number two, you're saying it takes less than intensive effort because when you're validating him and you're on his team and there's 3 people in the room, the change will come easier than with the intense effort. That's what you're saying so far, correct?
well, Kevin, you said I'm his buddy. Very often I'm not his buddy, meaning that, I mean, obviously, if I'm the therapist, I'm hoping that I have something to add to his situation. It's not that we're going to come in and talk about, whether the Yankees are in first place or not. There's an element where part of what I'm doing is I'm assessing the client. I call it waves at the beach. In other words, the client will come in and the first session he'll tell me that he gets angry at his mother. Okay, fine. That happens. You get angry at your mother. Next session he comes in, he gets angry at his brother. Next session he comes in, he gets angry at his teacher. The next session he comes in, he says he's angry at the neighbor. What I realized at a certain point is that it's, if we try to take each of these situations separately, then we miss the boat. Okay, because it's not that each person he's angry at, that it's the underlying issue that he's an angry person, that this is his overriding issue. So my job is to help him come to that recognition without me necessarily saying, well, I think that you're an angry person, right? Because if I say that to the client, very often his response is, I'm really not an angry person. I'm really not. If my mother wouldn't say this to me, if my brother didn't say that to me, if my teacher, was more respectful, my neighbor, you wouldn't believe what my neighbor did. Okay, so from the client's perspective, they're seeing it in a certain way that if everybody would treat me right, I wouldn't be angry. So in terms of working with that client, I have to be able to kind of convey, without necessarily accusing him, oh, you're angry. Okay, so very often the homework is, well, it seems that you get angry very often. Why don't we plan when and where and with who you're going to get angry again? Usually the client is surprised by that, because I'm not an angry person. Why are you planning that with me? Well, because it seems that, inevitably, every other day, every third day, you get angry at somebody. Why don't we plan right now? You and me together are going to plan who you're going to get angry at next. So again, from the client's perspective, it's confusing. So to say that I'm simply a buddy, a buddy doesn't, a buddy usually is not somebody who's going to confuse his friend. So the client will walk out a little confused. And to tell you the truth, even as I'm doing this seminar, even as I'm doing this podcast, what I need the listener to know is that at the end of this presentation, if you're confused, that's good. Because that means that your mind had to expand, it's not making sense to what you're accustomed to hearing. So if you're feeling a little confused, in my view, I think that's a positive
So far, you're doing an amazing job.
thing.
Let's go to the last question. In your opinion, what factors do you believe contribute to why some individuals may not find success in standard therapy? 7% client and therapist are not seeing eye to eye. 15%, some people just believe there's no real help with their specific problem. 27% believe change is so hard that talking is not really going to help. and 50% of people believe Menachem, you read it.
Incompatibility.
Incompatibility with the chosen therapeutic approach or methodology. So people believe that they're using the wrong type of therapy for their specific problem. What's your opinion on that, Paul?
Right. Well, it's interesting. When I first was coming out with Paradox and I came out with my book, in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm competing with CBT, I'm competing with behavioral. I have to somehow show people that my technique, my method. What I realized along the way is that when you're joining somebody, really, Paradox is about joining. It's if CBT works, then you're joining. The client will change. The client will get better. If a behavioral intervention, if a reward is going to work, again, the client will change and get better. So part of my view in Paradox is to kind of also identify what the client can relate to. Okay, I had an interesting case a while back. A father comes in with his son, and the kid, the father's trying to get the kid to talk. The kid is not talking. He's like, he can barely put two words together. And I'm trying to, get the kid, talk about this, I'm trying to relate to him. And the father tells me this kid has tons of friends. I'm thinking, come on, the guy can't talk. What are you talking about? He's got tons of friends. It doesn't make sense. So at one point I asked him, well, what do you like to do? What are you good at? He says he plays the guitar. Okay, hey, maybe the next session, bring in the guitar. So the next session, he comes in with the guitar. I'm telling you, he opened the case. He twirled the guitar, right before he started it. And the loving way that he twirled the guitar, I knew right away that he could play, that he had an ability to play. Yeah, people were coming over, friends were coming over because this guy could. he really knew how to do different songs, and he had friends because he had this knack for being able to play the guitar. So what I'm saying is that, for a client like this, for me to get through, somebody asked me today if I play anything, if I play any instruments. I said, well, I play the radio. That's what I play. But for a client like this, if he has a therapist that's more musical, that can relate to him on that level, in my view, I think that therapist would probably get through to this client better than I could, because the client is going to be able to relate with that other musician, and they're going to have a lot more in common than maybe that I had with this client. So, okay. So at least to answer your question, so it's a matter of really having a bond. But again, in my view, Paradox is an umbrella type therapy where a lot of therapy comes under it.
Okay, let's get into it. Okay, that's the first live questions. You're on.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I never did this before, but I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to ask you like this. In the last of your polls, which I can't see anymore, I wanted to review the wording.
It's the polls, I'll read it to you. It said, in your opinion, what factors do you believe contribute to why some individuals may not find success in standard therapy? Right. Either client therapists are not seeing eye to eye. Some people just believe there's no real help with a specific problem. Change is so hard that talking about it is really not going to help, or incapability with the chosen therapeutic approach.
Right.
Or method.
Okay, so really what my answer is the third one. I believe that change is so hard that you can talk from today until forever and it might not help. And the fourth choice over there was, or maybe the third choice was, the choice is the therapeutic approach, right? So I'm not a therapist. I don't know all the many different therapeutic approaches. But am I making sense? Like, I believe
What's your
that
question? What's your question?
no matter how many types of approaches one has tried, that may be nice and wonderful, but it's not getting anywhere because change is so hard. It just, that's why I think that what he said might work. The paradox, whatever he'll say to me, you know, in whatever my issues are, he'll show it to me in a way that I never heard before. Like that, I want to hear some more of his
Give me an
examples.
example. Let's use an example so we can try to play it out.
Yeah. Is there a situation in your life that you might be struggling with, and maybe you want to put it out
So
there?
let's say communication,
Okay.
dealing with people. I can't say it's absolutely nobody that I could communicate with. Baruch Hashem, I think I'm a very nice person, easy to be friendly and everything. But there are some people that when I talk to or they talk to me, we just aren't coming to an understanding of each other. We just have a hard time seeing the same way. How do we overcome that?
Right. Well, the first thing I would say is that obviously, you know, to be on the same page as everybody is a very tall order, because, you know, we're all individuals, and we're all trying to communicate. We're all trying to communicate with other people. But I would say generally, the feeling we want to feel comfortable in our communication on some level. But usually it's the people in our family, parents that we hope to communicate with best, spouse that we're trying to communicate with, our kids, we're trying to communicate with. If you're not communicating with the neighbors so much, you're probably not so upset. But it's usually people within the family that gives us that issue.
Exactly.
Right. So my question is there a specific person in your family that you would hope that you would want to communicate better with?
I would say my spouse.
Okay. So in your view, so he doesn't understand you. You tell him that you would like to something a certain way, and he doesn't respond. What's the issue that comes up?
Okay, I feel like I'm having a private session, so this is very good.
No. We're trying to understand the
Right.
We can explain it how he would deal with it with his method.
Okay. Once we had a discussion like this in front of a therapist, we said, my husband likes to go bowling. I don't. I would rather go to the park, to outdoors. And somehow we just couldn't come to an agreement here. You know, everybody is different, right? We said that, but how can we get to that middle ground of anything? It could be about money. It could be about raising children, different ideas that, you know, should the kids do this or that or not?
Right.
And we're not able to be, what do you want to call it? Communication.
So I'm going to reword what you just told me, and you'll tell me if I'm correct. What I'm hearing is that every time you say left, your husband says right, and every time you say right, your husband says left.
A lot of times there's that, and we're both smart, so it's hard.
Right. So that's the pattern. That's what you're doing. So you're struggling to convince him of your side, correct? And I imagine on some level he might be struggling to convince you of his side. Well, let me ask that question again. Does he struggle to I mean, you're obviously upset because you're not communicating with him, correct?
I think that he gets more disappointed than I do, that I don't understand him.
Okay, but at the same time, you get disappointed that he doesn't understand you.
Well, I'm really kind of more easygoing, and you know, if it didn't work, it didn't work. We'll figure it out a different time. We'll do something else. I'll just let it I'll let it disappear, which of course it doesn't disappear.
Right. So you give in. Sounds like you're generally giving into whatever. If your husband wants to go bowling, generally you're going to end up going bowling.
I think we lost her.
Okay.
So she'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right, she'll be back. Okay.
That's
So
not
so basically the assignment is that to expect. You see usually the struggle that people have is that it's always a big surprise when they say when she says right and the husband says left. It's a big surprise. What? I can't believe it. It's like it seems like it's like where did this come from? I said left, he said right. I said right, he said left. It's always new. It's always. But for what she's presenting, this is the predictable pattern. So on a certain level, if we can plan right now that she's going to say left and the husband's going to say right, then we already know ahead of time what we're walking into. And it sounds like she's more willing to give in. So I would say let's plan that you're going to give in. You're going to say right, he's going to say left. You're going to say right, he's going to say left. By the third time, you're going to give in, and then he gets his way, and everybody's happy. Not.
But that was her question. She doesn't want that to happen. She feels it's happening already for 10 years.
Right. No, I understand, but the point being is that obviously she's struggling with that. But I'm just giving feedback on the pattern, right?
I'm sorry, I disappeared for a while.
Yeah, you did.
Her husband
Okay.
disconnected it.
Glad you're
No,
back.
I set my phone to die for the purpose of kids not using it. Could you imagine that?
Okay.
So I guess I got back on.
Okay.
Okay, so
Good.
Dr. Eliot, how in her situation, forget about hers, in general, when there's miscommunication and they don't see eye to eye, how would paradox therapy,
Well, I mean, we have to plan on.
how
the
would we play it out? How would
miscommunication.
we play it out with her?
Well, I mean, she mentioned that she was in couples therapy with her spouse. What I usually do in therapy, it sounds crazy, but what I do is I side with the husband and I side with the wife.
Oh,
Right.
I have to say just the husband. All the men were about to sign up. I had like 100
Right.
men about to sign up.
No, I'll side with the husband and I'll side with the wife. And generally, I'm still waiting for somebody to say, well, wait a minute. If you're siding with him, then you can't side with me. And if you're siding with me, then how can you be siding with him? But it turns out that people just want to know that they're being heard. That's basically what people want to know. Once they know that they're heard, it's a little easier to be more flexible once they can acknowledge that. So if they were here as a couple, I would turn to the husband. I'd say, okay, so you like to go bowling. You like to do things like that, and your wife likes to go to the park. But it sounds like, husband, you don't want to give in. You like bowling, and there's a part of you that's what your thing is. You love bowling. You're going to go bowling. That's what you like. Am I correct? Oh, no, that's the point. Am I correct?
Right.
And I would expect that he would say, yeah, I like bowling. I'd say, very good, excellent. And then I would turn to you and I would say, okay, so you're telling me that you like going to the park, you like maybe taking a walk outside and spending a little time outside, but you really don't like going bowling. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And ultimately, because of that situation, I guess there's always going to be a little tension between you and your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So why don't we, you and me together, we're going to plan that the next time you're going to approach your husband about taking a walk, he's going to basically say no. And I mean, this is what you'll expect it, that he's going to say no, and that he's going to want to go bowling. Part of it is, I guess you have to expect that you're going to be upset. And obviously, because the pattern is that you give in, so the husband never really has to do anything different, really. So we'll just plan that you'll give in. How's that?
Okay.
You happy with that?
Yeah.
No, you're not. No, you're not happy with that.
So you mean I should say, no, I'm not happy with that, and then?
Well, I mean, the reality is, I think that
Right. I'm
you know,
not happy with it.
right.
Right. Honestly, I
yeah,
would say that.
and
Fine.
I wouldn't expect that you would be happy with it. But the point is that if you're always going to give in to your husband, then there's really no reason for him to change. You know, when I work with anybody, I'm always looking for what motivates this person. What's going to get this person to do something a little different? Not because I'm going to convince them, but simply because this is what they want to do.
So how does this work?
So what I'm saying to you is that if you're always going to give in to your husband, then essentially there's no motivation on his end to do anything different. If you say, okay, you go bowling and I'm going to take a walk and I'll see you later, that's going to rock the boat a little bit. Okay. So sometimes what I do in Paradox is I kind of poke, all right? Meaning that the question is, if you really want to take a walk, I mean, I'm telling you ahead of time that you will feel uncomfortable if you go for a walk and your husband doesn't agree. But I would be interested to see how your husband reacts to that. In other words, the hope is that your husband would say, "Wow, you took a walk without me, and we always go bowling together, and and I thought that maybe you were getting to like bowling." But if your husband sees that you're doing something different, then that's going to put a little pressure on him. Now, generally you might think you have the answer of how he's going to react. The reality is you don't know. You don't know, and I don't know, right? So, but I'm just saying that if you do something different, there's a saying that if you keep doing the definition of crazy is if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? So what I'm saying is that on that level, if you think that you would really like to go for a walk, it's not a matter of arguing with your husband, or he should come with you. You'd like him to come. You're letting him know, I'd like to go for a walk with you. I went bowling with you last week. Maybe next week I'll go bowling with you, but today, I'd like to do something that I'd like to do.
And if you're saying that if you go and do something different, then things might change.
Well, I'm saying that when I talk about the system is usually in equilibrium. Right now, the equilibrium is that you give in. As long as you're giving in, there's no reason for him to do anything different because that's the equilibrium. He's happy, right? On your end, if you do something a little different, that's going to put pressure on the other end of the equation, right? So in my mind, I'm just questioning like what would happen if
it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think I might have heard something like this, but not said straight out like that. Like someone would ask me, "Oh, so did you do what you wanted to do?"
right.
And I'd say, "Yeah, sometimes."
Right.
So if that's
but let me just say, again, I'm this is a short conversation, and in like 10 minutes, I try to size everything up. My homework too. I'm going to give you homework. Okay. Now, the homework I'm going to give you might not like, but I have faith that you will do it. Okay. You ready? All right.
Right.
The homework is I want you to give in. That's your homework. You have to give in. Whatever your kids want, you give in. Whatever your husband wants, you give in. Whatever your mother wants, you give in. Whatever your father wants, you're gonna
give in.
That's correct. And I think you can do it.
I love homework.
Okay, and you'll do it.
But again, Dr. you're doing the paradox with her, but I want to understand, this is where I'm going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying to her is she should be an abused, martyred woman that just always gives in. Why is that going to change, right? You're married to somebody who's going to take advantage of you and you're always going to give in.
Right. Okay, and that's a good question. So normally when she gives in, she's alone, she's by herself. She's all by herself giving in, right? It's her against the world.
Right.
What I just did in this intervention is that I took away that aloneness. In other words, as she's giving in, all right, what I'm expecting is that she's suddenly going to realize, I mean, it's not that she doesn't know that she gives in. She's very aware that she gives in. And she knows that she shouldn't, right? I know I shouldn't do it, but you do it anyway because you're alone in that system. By me joining, by me giving the homework that this is what you must do, now the next time that you give in, it's like all of a sudden, is this really what I want to do? So instead of it taking 10 minutes to figure out, you might figure it out in 5 minutes. You might figure it out in 3 minutes, and to really decide, is this really what I want to do right now?
I
Let me
understand. It
let me
makes
amp
sense.
up her question. Yeah, it all makes sense. Let me amp up her question a little bit.
Yeah.
If her husband is a narcissist and he's gonna love this because he's gonna choose you as a therapist, and he's gonna pay you top dollar because you're doing exactly what he would like, how is she ever gonna get out of it?
Well, that's the question. That's the $1 million question. Because if the husband's a narcissist, which I don't know at this point, right? Because I'm not talking to the husband. I've never met him. The hope is, like in relationships, the hope is, I'm going to give in a little for you. You're going to give in a little for me. We're going to do something together. I know that you're really invested in doing this. Okay, we're going to do that. You want to go to a trip to Miami, and I want to go for a trip to Chicago. All right, so now we'll go to Miami, but the assumption is that next time we're going to go to Chicago. So there's a give and take, right? That's my sense. If the husband says, wow, this is great, I'm going to get everything that I always want. Well, I mean, first of all, there's a part where the husband's realized along the way that if he just does what he wants, that eventually his wife will give in, she'll give in. But the question is, if you're not happy doing that, if you try something a little different, the question is, will that change the situation?
So are you recapping that if somebody has mental illness, narcissist, or borderline, that this method could be actually extremely dangerous?
I don't know that I would say it's dangerous. I think that there
That's
just
why
needs
it's the
to
world's
be,
most dangerous therapy?
well, it's the most dangerous therapy because I think people are more shocked by it. In other words, it's like I think it's dangerous because people have their assumption that therapy is hard and that I have to work hard to change. It's like so it kind of rocks the boat of people's assumption of what therapy has to be.
I think
But
what you're saying is good, because I think what you're saying is in a regular relationship when there's two healthy people and you see that one person goes along with it and you're giving them the chizik and you're on their side and you're with them, the other person
right.
actually feels like changing, I feel guilty of this and that, but I feel like when you're dealing with not healthy people, this would be detrimental.
But
Right. Well,
I want
right.
to come in. I want to come in for a second. Ushi is not saying that she should give in. He's not telling her, just continue giving in. That's something she did till now.
Right.
And by him giving her the homework to continue giving in, she will next time think twice if she wants to give in or not.
Correct.
So there you go. You got a little bit of a change already.
Completely lost.
So slowly. Slowly. That's what it is.
Yeah. In other words,
You have to realize also, come as a spouse and as a couple, and the therapist tells her in front of him that you should give in, then the husband will always say, Dr. Eliot, PhD,
no.
he said
So,
give in.
hold on. So then I would turn to the husband, and I would give the husband homework. And my homework to the husband is, husband, you should never give in. You should never give in, husband. You have to always get your way. Right? Now you have to realize the husband's going to smile. He's going to like this homework. Wow, this is really great. All right.
I'm coming with you. I'm coming to you for that.
But you have to realize that if the husband realizes at a certain point that now when he even for him, when he's going to do his homework, right, that he's not going to give in. A narcissist is very alone in the world. Narcissist is like everything revolves around them. It's the narcissist against the world. So all of a sudden, if I'm popping up next to him and I'm going, yeah, don't give in, don't even think of giving in. It actually is upsetting to the narcissist because it's like, who are you to jump into my box? Get out. Who let you into my box here? But the point being is but again, I don't know that he's a narcissist, and maybe if she did something a little different, if but
Okay, let's go through some more questions. We're gonna have to clarify it more and more because I think
Yeah,
a lot of
okay.
people have the same issue that I'm having.
Working. It's working.
Yeah, it's working. I'm already confused.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
But the one thing I want to say is, this is a good example. We're talking about the behavior, right? I'm talking about the behavior. So okay, just keep giving in, right? That's the behavior. But underneath what I'm doing is I'm just saying to the wife, you're not alone. I'm with you. We're planning this together. And that is what's the changes. That's what's different here. Okay, it's a
Okay.
different.
Let's go to the next question. Yeah, okay. We're gonna need a lot more clarity, but I'm gonna grill you. Let's go. Next
Okay.
question, you're on.
Okay, so how can you apply the same paradox psychology with someone someone suffering from very severe depression, to the point where they can't get out of bed, they're just always sleeping, not motivated, looks at
Right.
everything in a very negative light, and also dealing with like panic from very small, minute things, little things that won't affect somebody else. It just puts them in a very severe panic.
Correct. Okay. So as you can tell, if I say to the person who's depressed, okay, let's get more depressed, that's not helpful. Okay. And the reason it's not helpful is because basically the person's depressed already. The homework is to get more depressed. So really he's kind of even more by himself because nobody wants to be depressed. And I'm not really standing next to him because he's kind of getting just kind of going into the pit, that emptiness. So that's
Right.
not really where I don't really want to go there. So with depression, with suicide, it's like, I'm not going to say to the suicidal person, okay, let's plan when you're going to commit suicide. That's irresponsible. Okay. All right.
Right.
But what I do want to know is what motivates you, client? In general, when things were good, what got you out of bed? What do you like doing? Okay, what are your hobbies? If it's an elderly person, sometimes the elderly feel alone, they feel isolated. So I might start talking to them about their grandchildren, about maybe something that they did in their, when they were working. In other words, if you get a sense, I'm joining that person in reminding them that there are things in life that they enjoy. Right.
Mhm.
So what I would do with that kind of person is I say, you know what, the next time I come, maybe you could show me pictures of your grandchildren. I'd really like to see them. And if you get a sense now, the person, hopefully the depressed person, is looking forward. Wow, okay, my therapist is coming back and he wants to see my grandkids, and I'm going to be able to share it with him. And I'm going to tell him the story about my 3-year-old, when my 3-year-old said it was Miami, and when I said I was going to Miami, and my 3-year-old said no, it was his Miami. It's a little story, but the person is going to come alive. And that's the joining. That's because I'm on the same page as that person.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go a little deeper. I'm gonna unmute Gregory. Gregory maybe will help us explain a little bit deeper because I'm lost. Gregory, unmute.
Thank you so much. So I have an example from my own life. I've had the privilege for the last 3 or 4 years of participating in a Thursday Zoom session with Dr. Kaplan. And around that time, and I myself have clients that I work with, but at the time I was working with my own periodic edge, losing my cool, being short-tempered at times. And specifically with my wife, who I adore, and we've been together 25 years very happily, but we sandpaper each other, and that's how the jewel continues to get revealed. So at the time, I was getting impatient with myself for getting impatient with her. And so there was some sandpapering going on between us, but really within myself, because I know better. Here I know better, but I was having some reactivity that was destructive. And so I had attended a Zoom session with Dr. Kaplan, and I smiled because there was a kind of epiphany connecting inside, not my ego, but somewhere deeper in my heart, of that, how I relate to what he says about the infinite nature, the nature that Rumi talks about beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There's a field. So I go into the field inside myself, the spaciousness, and I made a decision from that place that the next time I'm activated, I'm gonna really let my wife have it. I'm giving myself the assignment that I'm gonna really let my wife have it. Now, what that looks like, I don't know, but let's see. So the next day, we had an appointment at the doctor with our at the time 13-year-old daughter. We go, and a new doctor came in and asked some very personal questions about our daughter, with our daughter sitting there, who this younger daughter has Down syndrome, that I was very uncomfortable with and felt was inappropriate to be discussing in front of her. Would be more appropriate to be step outside, have the nurse sit with our daughter, and have me and my wife talk to him. But he did, and I got thrown for a moment, already triggered by his question and the lack of sensitivity. And then my wife answered it without checking in with me. And I got really triggered, and I could feel that momentary percolation, and I could feel the impulse to go, are you kidding me? What are you doing? Answering the guys that I could feel that, and simultaneously, like Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, that's our freedom to choose. In that moment, I was also present to the wisdom of my heart and the assignment I gave myself. And I kind of chuckled because I recognized this is the perfect opportunity to really let her have it. And somewhere inside, I simultaneously, being my ego self and my wisdom self, being standing together, recognize the absolute ridiculousness of me busting my wife's chops while we're sitting there both committed and devoted to our daughter's safety and well-being, and our shared devotion to our family's care. So I just, rather than being reactive, even though that was my assignment, I just breathed. And it's not like the whole thing vanished, but there was a neutrality that washed over me, because I recognized I had the agency. I reclaimed my agency. I wasn't a slave to being reactive to the first impulse that shot up. No, I recognized, not only can I do this and it not being wrong, there's a part of me encouraging me to be right. And I thought, okay, hang on a sec. This is absurd. I'm gonna just breathe. We're not gonna accomplish anything here. We'll wait until we get in the car and we'll have a. So not only did I successfully stay cool in the moment, didn't say a word as I normally might as soon as we leave the room, got in the car, and as we got in the car, I glanced over at her, and as distinct from when I am sometimes triggered, withdrawing physical affection, pulling physically and emotionally, withdrawing, rather than that, in my neutrality, I was able to reach my hand over and put my hand on her leg, and genuinely, with a heart connection, say, can we talk about something that I was really uncomfortable with that just took place upstairs? And she said, yeah. And I said, when the doctor, and then I just observed what took place.
Gregory, let's hone in on this. I want to really zoom in, hyper focus. The story is a beautiful story. What gave you that ability to center yourself in the moment when your subconscious mind wanted you to go cuckoo-luku? What was that thing? Because you felt that you should, or you felt that you could? So again, I'm just talking out loud. Is it because I have a personality that I always don't listen to what I'm supposed to do? So now that I know I'm supposed to scream, I'm not going to scream? Or it's because you had that, what was the thing? What was that core thing that you think through the therapy, through the paradoxic theory, helped you in that core moment? Like really just zoom in on it so people can understand it.
For me in this moment,
yes,
I've spent a lot of time cultivating a relationship. Everybody has a different word for it, but I've spent a lot of time cultivating. In IFS, they call it the self. So there's a that me that is not one of my parts, but it is most authentically me, which is not jumping into judgment of good and bad. And so I know that place well. I have a relationship with that place, and there's something about it was from that place that I gave myself the assignment. So that in a way, similar to a therapist working with a client, where the therapist is in essence, as I've heard some people say, loaning the prefrontal cortex during that time to the client. There was, for me, an alliance being made that may otherwise not have been present between that peaceful, wise, expansive me and the reactive me. I made a commitment I made it an alliance by speaking from that place and giving the assignment. And so even like I can imagine, because when I'm reactive, I can't speak for anyone else, but when I'm reactive, 9 out of 10 times, if somebody would grab me by the collar and say, hey, just tell me the truth right now, if you're really honest and checked inside, how old are you right now? 3.
But again, you're going into now IFS, and you're going into
so let me jump in here. So very often, when I'm working with a client, I accept them, but I also kind of challenge them. And sometimes what I'll do if a client is impulsive about their anger, what I might say, okay, the assignment is that you will get angry, okay? And listen, I know and you know that you have no free will. And since you have no free will, the anger is going to overtake you. Now, when you tell somebody that they have no free will, you're insulting their humanness, okay? If somebody would say, Asha, you have no free will, you're going to do this and this. Very often there's a visceral response like, who are you to tell me that I have no free will? I'm a human being.
Because I fight authority. So for me, it's perfect.
Okay, so
the guy who follows whatever the therapist says, I'm going to follow it exactly to the T.
Well, you have no free will. That's good.
Follow my therapist.
Okay, but you get a sense that when I tell a client that it's okay that you have no free will, that very often is kind of like the little poke for the client to decide if they want to do something different.
Okay, pause for a second. Okay, hi, Sarah, jump in.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening to Mr. Vahani, and he just kind of really took the words out of my mouth, because I was wondering earlier when Dr. Kaplan mentioned the word absurdity. It was just running through my head already, the word absurdity. And does that mean to be like you say that you see the absurdity of certain mental responses to things, or is it the situation? But like you realize, I actually think it's really not as bad or as dramatic as it is. Why am I making a big thing about it? Why am I playing head trips with myself? I can see an example. Many years ago, I was struggling with agoraphobia, and I was seeing a therapist, and he said, I think I was traumatized once I fainted in public, so I just assumed that was going to happen again. I was always worried about the humiliation, and then the therapist said, "Well, nothing happened, has it? Nothing." Yeah, okay, that's a nice in a cognitive way, but at one point I just said, if I'm going to freak out, just freak out. I mean, I think I was in a public place somewhere. I had to do my errands, and I felt certain anxiety. So, okay, freak out already. Well, then, crickets chirping, nothing happened. And it's not that I was cured. Like Dr. Vahani said, I didn't walk out magically transformed, to realize that I was playing a lot of head trips with myself. And sometimes you just either do something that maybe the opposite of what if that's what you mean by paradox. Sometimes you have to do something either against your nature or against what you really don't. You'd rather do something else, but you've got to do this. And I wasn't even doing it to be a better person. I was doing it to survive in the world. I can't spend my life behind closed doors. I'm dealing with that now. I just got mugged 2 weeks ago, so I'm a little nervous going into the lobby of my apartment building. But I got to do what I got to do.
Right.
Sometimes is that maybe you just have to survive and get on with life. But I'm just saying, is that what you mean by absurdity? You're just seeing the absurdity of playing head trips with yourself, or just being stuck in a certain way of thinking and realize sometimes, I guess you have to give in, or it sounds like you're negotiating with a spouse or something, or is that what you mean by the absurdity of something?
Right.
Like, not even worth the trouble, or what? I wasn't sure.
Well, let me just jump in. That it turns out that paradoxical interventions are very good for people who have panic attacks. Because usually, people are trying so hard not to have a panic attack, and they're so guarded and walking out and afraid they're going to have the panic attack.
Yeah.
And then in paradox, I said, well, let's plan that you will have a panic attack.
Exactly.
You're gonna get on the bus, and your hands are gonna start sweating, and we're gonna plan that you will. And the interesting thing is that now that you're planning it, again, the person generally has a panic attack when they're alone, they're isolated, they're all by themselves. But by the very fact that we're planning it together, that you will have the panic attack, it's like now they're getting on the bus, but then they're not by themselves anymore. It's like they have this like shadow that joins them, and it just reduces that sense of tension.
Yeah, or even a strategy. Okay, if I freak out, at least there'll be other people there to comfort me. But it's just that I don't know. I mean, thank God it's history now, this whole thing. But I'm just saying, years ago, where it was really crippling. I know people that stay in their rooms, their homes. But say just developing a certain strategy, or that would a plan B, I guess. Maybe realizing that there are avenues of, if not control, I don't want to say escape, but control. None of us have complete control over our lives. I've learned, but you have a certain measure of, I guess, seichel. Obviously faith, but there's seichel. I think that's why I really just started using it. That's realized why am I being so silly? So I don't know if that's meant by absurdity. It was just funny because when you said the word, I was just thinking it over here in my room, and maybe that, but it explains that I appreciated what Mr. Vahanian or Dr. Vahanian, whatever he said.
Okay, let's do the next question, and I want Moshe Norman to answer the question first, and then you'll comment on that. Okay, Dr. Eliot, does that work for you?
All right, yeah, sure. Let Moshe jump in.
Okay, Moshe will jump in. The question goes like this, and I want him to explain for us simpletons who don't understand still what you're trying to express. He's going to explain it via the question, how your theory works and how it would play out on this question. Okay. My husband / or wife, spouse, has been in therapy for a year now. He comes home, or she comes home, with all the knowledge and ideas and methods, but does not change and does not follow through. What can be done to get my spouse to change via the paradox therapy? Moshe, can you explain that?
Okay.
Explain the question, explain the problem. I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times.
Okay,
Explain
great.
to this simpleton person how paradox therapy would play out in that scenario and how it would possibly help them.
Okay, so I just want to give
Moshe, I just want to say you're crashing my show. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm crashing the show.
Again?
I'm crashing the show. And the reason is because I spent about 10 years learning paradox therapy from Dr. Eliot Kaplan. And the one thing I will say definitively is that it is absolutely magical and it works. I use paradoxical therapy in my practice all the time.
I just want to go back because people are texting the whole time. I don't understand it. He's saying
good. So I'm going to give you my explanation of it. That's pretty much
based. Very clear.
It's going to be as clear as we can make it. I'd like to first just make an introduction that when people are doing behaviors that they don't want to do, or that are negative behaviors, maladaptive, dysfunctional behaviors, they're also struggling with themselves. We have to see that a person who struggles with anger and is getting angry constantly and yelling at people, or a child who's bickering and bothering his sibling all the time, besides for the fact that he's doing this behavior, he also is struggling with himself. Like, what's wrong with me? that I'm having a panic attack? What's wrong with me that I'm constantly bothering my brother and I don't have a more effective way to get my message across? What's wrong with me that I'm constantly fighting with my spouse? So there's really two layers. There's the negative behavior that they're doing, and then there's the struggle that they're having with themselves. And that's really what drives people to therapy. But what if we took that second element away? What if we said to somebody, oh, you're having panic attacks and you hate yourself for having panic attacks, and that's making you struggle, hate yourself even more, and isolate even more. So we say, we have a better idea. Forget about hating yourself for having the panic attack. Let's go out in public and plan the panic attack. We know exactly how it happens. We know exactly when it happens. We know exactly what symptoms come on. So what I want you to do is I want you to go out into public, into the same place, onto the bus when you go there, and I want you to have that panic attack. Bring it on as best as you can. So have your hands go into a cold sweat. Now what's happening is that you're actually validating yourself. You're joining yourself rather than fighting yourself. You're embracing yourself and you're saying, let's have the panic attack. And inevitably, if we prescribe that properly, the client goes out and they come back and they say, okay, so how did it go? And they say, it didn't work out as well as it was supposed to. I tried to have the panic attack. It didn't really come on so strongly this time. And we say, look, you got to, in order for us to be able to help you, you got to first be able to go on and really bring on that full-fledged panic attack. Now, as each time they're finally accepting themselves for having the panic attack because they're trying to do it, right? So they're accepting themselves instead of fighting with themselves. They're releasing that neurotic pressure and tension that they're constantly living with. When I go and I tell a child, okay, you always fight with your brother. I know you're saying you do it just because you want to have more power over him, but the real truth is you can't control yourself from fighting with him. This is the only way you know how to behave. So instead of acknowledging that, no, I'm doing this in order to be in control of him so that he'll always do what I want, let's acknowledge that you really can't control it. It's the only way you know how to communicate. And so since you're really good at that, let's plan it for this week. How often do you typically bother your brother over the course of a week? How many times a day? And then we'll plan for the child to do it. So now, by handing it to him, by encouraging him to do it, he's able to take a step back. He gets into a little bit of confusion and he's like, wait a minute, I have to do this? Do I have to do this? And now suddenly when he's confronted with some challenge that he's having with his brother, he has my voice, or actually has Eliot Kaplan's voice in his head saying, okay, you got to go bother him because you know no other way of doing it. And that opens up his free choice to say, wait a minute, maybe there is another way. If we were to be telling him, stop, let's come up with ways and strategies that you can, we're only causing him to be more and more frustrated because his knee-jerk reaction is to go into what he always does. But here we're actually putting him into a position where his knee-jerk reaction is going to be, wait a minute, Kaplan said, Norman said, we got to go and bother the brother more. But why should I do that? Why do I have to do that? Is that the only way? And we put them into this conflict where suddenly, because they're accepting of themselves, they feel more connected to themselves, they're able to back off and think of something new. They come back inevitably the next week and say, well, I didn't do it 10 times this week, but I did it 5 times. And we say, yeah, but you usually do it 10 times. You're really failing at this intervention. We gotta make this intervention better. We don't want you to lose your identity of a brother botherer, okay, a brother bickerer. So let's plan this better and get to it. And then the next week they come back and they say, there's such a pain in the neck to have to bother him all the time. I only did it 2 times this week. I don't want to hear this. It's so stupid. I don't want to do it anymore. And before you know it, what's happening is, Dr. Kaplan explains this all the time, that because he's making new choices, he's actually increasing his self-esteem. And while he increases his self-esteem, he need not bother his brother that much anymore. Oshi, is that more clear for you?
I think we're getting it, but now we're going to have to break it down into various scenarios. So a lot of people are asking, will it work with this? Will it work with that? You know what I mean? Your explanation is very clear, Dr. Eliot. Sometimes the Talmud could give it over a little bit clearer to the simpletons. So he's
well, yeah, again, what I would say to you is you have to go through the confusion of this because again, when you've been in psychology for so long, you know what to expect. Okay, yeah, you have to work on it hard. For me to say, oh, there's no effort, there's relatively little effort. I mean, the example I give, it's kind of like you go into a room and you flick the light on, right? So the light goes on, right? But really, it's like minimal effort. Yes, you're going to flick the switch, but it's not that you have to push the switch and get a wrench out to make the switch go. It's really kind of, there's a natural flow that you let go of the tension that's keeping you in a certain position. I'm just saying that the logical mind has to go through a certain confusion to kind of get to the other side of what we're talking about here.
Okay, let's go to another live question. Let's see. Hold on. Want to unmute? Wait 1 second. Okay. Just 1 second. Unmute.
Yeah,
Hello?
hi.
Hi,
Yeah,
how are
hi.
you?
I'm okay. What happens if your husband has a rage, constant rage, and trying to work different kind of things, like bringing something up back and saying, "How about looking at it from this perspective?" And then I give him A, B, and then he goes, "You're making me angry. You're making me angry." I'm not making him doing anything. He's raging himself here, and at the same time, I was trying to be vulnerable with another scenario, and I thought, oh, we're going to be vulnerable. We'll be able to open up. And now I said, I don't want to be vulnerable, So yeah, I'm kind of getting detached from feeling from him. So I don't know how to handle this. And that's been going for a while. He has a temper.
Right.
I'd like to know what's how to handle.
So one of the things I very often I present about paradox, and very often people they'll listen and they go, I'm going to try this on my husband. I'm going to try this on my kids. And what I tell them generally is no, back up, because generally, your kid is like throwing his socks on the floor, and you tell him not to throw his socks on the floor. And then finally you come to me and say, oh, I just went to this Kaplan training. You know what? Throw your socks on the floor. Yeah, go ahead, throw your socks on the floor. Because you're in the same system with that child, with your family, what ends up happening is the kid knows you don't want the socks on the floor. Right. But now, oh, mommy said I can throw the socks on the floor. Now I'm going to throw the socks on the floor. So what I'm saying is, because the system is the same, in other words, nothing's changed within the system, then the kid is just going to throw his socks on the floor. So to try to
What about
convince
the husband?
So to try to convince your husband, for you to be the therapist for your husband is not going to work.
I know.
All right. which what I'm trying to say is that the advantage I have is that I'm on the outside. And because I'm on the outside, when I give homework, when I give an assignment, it's like now my presence changes the system.
I see.
And because the system changes, now it can change. And I'll be quite honest, I think I'm pretty good at what I do. But you know what? When I go home and I'm with my wife and with my kids, I've learned that there are things that I want to say, and there are things that I want to jump in. And I know in my therapy this would really work, but because I realize I'm in the system, if I jump in and say, well, what about this? Oh yeah, you should just keep doing it. My wife's going to say, yeah, you're doing therapy on me. Yeah, that's your crazy therapy, right? Because she knows what I do. She knows my crazy therapy. So it doesn't work with her. That's all I'm saying. Because
nothing's going to work. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
You need to have. I think the advantage is that you have to be as part of outside the system. But again, if I was to give you homework, from what you've presented so far, again, I'm taking a leap of faith here, but I would say the homework for you is to be your husband's therapist and to just see how he reacts.
Because he's not going to like it.
No. But blame it on me. Blame it on me. Tell him that you went to this training, and this crazy guy Kaplan said that you're supposed to be his therapist, and that he told you to just keep telling him that he should be better. Yeah, he's gonna hate it, but at least on your end, you can kind of if you can kind of step back and watch his reaction, okay, then you kind of learn like his triggers and how that there's a dance that goes between you, because he knows that you're going to try to change him, and he knows he's not going to change. But now you kind of observe the dance a little better. If you see
now let me jump to Moshe. One second. Moshe, not specifically her, but how would that play out? I'm just trying to explain what would happen when she did that.
It's hard for me to wrap my head around this particular intervention, but
General.
I'll give you a similar, if I were to have a couple in the room, if Jane was there with her husband, and what inevitably what plays out in therapy sessions, usually not necessarily within the first few minutes of the session, everyone's on their best behavior, but inevitably the husband's going to get triggered, and he's going to start to yell at his wife in some form, get aggressive with her, or yell at her in some form. And what I would do as the therapist is I would notice that, and I would say, okay, it looks like the way that you guys interact is when your wife says something that upsets you or triggers you. This is you cut her off or
Right.
get aggressive in such and such way. Is that about right? Is that the typical?
100%. You got it. 100%.
So at that point, I would say, okay, well, now that we get how this relationship works, what I'm going to have you do is anytime your wife says something that you disagree with, or that upsets you or triggers you, I want you to make sure, that you call her out on it and yell at her really loud. Because when you do, then you'll make sure to set the stage, you'll set the record straight. So I want you to yell at her each time. Now, the absurdity here is that I am prescribing to the husband to yell at his wife. That doesn't sound normal, right? It's
no, I had that happen to me. I had a situation exactly like that happened. And what I did do is I said, I'll talk to you when you're calmer. And I went back to my car and just waited for him. Or waited
yes,
outside.
and that would be an appropriate intervention for a wife who's being aggressed by her husband. But in the therapy process, I would instruct him to now yell at you each time you trigger him, and then the next time it happens, he might forget and do it again, and then I'll compliment him for it. I'll say, you were spot on, and this was exactly what you were supposed to do, and I appreciate that you're following the instruction of the therapist and giving it to your wife over the head and setting the record straight. At that point, I've given him the permission to do so, which enables him now to take a step back and say, this is absurd. I shouldn't be yelling at my wife in the therapy room, especially in front of a stranger. And the next time she triggers him, he's going to be in somewhat of a, he's going to have some chaos going on inside of him. The therapist is telling me to yell at her, but that's ridiculous. And so he's going to begin to start exercising self-control and toning down his aggression towards his wife.
But he does yell at other people too sometimes. It depends.
That would be how it would play would play it out in the therapy.
But what do I do to him? Because I'm not going to say it's therapy or whatever. I said, that's so yell at me. Should I just go like him, yell at me? Set the record straight. Can I just say that for myself?
Dr. Kaplan?
Well, I think that you have to be aware that if your husband has a short fuse, then usually I'm assuming that when he gets angry, it's always a big surprise. Oh, I can't believe he got angry. Where did that come from? Why is he getting angry again?
Right.
The point is that that's him. That he's got that. It's a surprise when he doesn't get angry.
Right. 100%.
So what I would say to you is that if you can figure out certain exit strategies, knowing that by the way, sometimes people are on a time schedule. They're kind of like the train coming into the station, the 9:15.
He's a perfect. He likes that exactly. He can't stand it. He hates to be late.
No. But what I'm saying is that some people are so scheduled that even with their anger, it's like they get angry on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday.
That I can't schedule, but he likes to be on time.
Well, but what I'm saying is that if you realize that he gets angry Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, then that knowledge for yourself means that, okay, I have to leave the house before he has an explosion because today is his day, right? So if you're aware of it, then what I'm saying is that you can react differently, that you can respond differently.
So I've been trying to at least not answer or say, but I don't feel good inside. Like I don't want to be vulnerable anymore. Like we had a moment of 2 days or 3 days, and I said, I don't want to do. I know this is going to come up occasionally now, and I'm accepting it just for today, and that's doing that. So I should just like today's reaction. It was like, okay, what can I say? And then I just went off and did my own thing, and that's it. So okay. I just did something like that.
How does he react when you say, okay, I guess I'll just do my own thing? What's his reaction?
No, I just keep quiet. I just always one time I said to lower the volume, and then he did. And I said, I'm here to hear you. No, let's go, and I'll leave you alone. And then I keep quiet. That's what I try to do. I try to keep quiet while he was raising
Right.
the radio. So I
Right.
got him to do that, and then I just did my own thing. But I was using some other tools, like to do stroking and this I forgot, disarming stuff.
Mhm.
So I was trying to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, at least I got some ideas. I like Maisha's idea to say, yes, thank you. Come again. Give me more.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that.
But if he finds that that's provoking him, he's going to give you more.
I know, but I have to. I had to
see-
be able to handle it.
Well, all right. I'm just saying that's why you need an outside person, because if I
Yes.
provoke him, then he can only get angry at me. In my therapy, I would not want to encourage him to get angry. I mean, I don't say get angry at your wife. What I say is, it seems to me that that your propensity is to get angry at your wife, and I'm not saying that you should get angry at your wife, but it seems like every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we can expect that this is what's going to happen. So I'm not telling him that I want you to get angry. I'm trying to raise his awareness in himself that he thinks his anger is spontaneous. The reality is it's not spontaneous at all. It's very scheduled.
Okay. Hopefully they work it out. Here's another question that somebody sent in. And let's see how paradox psychology will help them out. I have a very negative outlook on Hashem, and my relationship is disconnected with him because of all the hardships that he has brought upon me. Is it okay if I don't want to daven? I don't want to talk to him. I guess they're very angry. What would be the right approach to heal these feelings of hurt towards Hashem?
Mm-hmm. I think that part of davening is to be honest with Hashem and to say, Hashem, I'm disappointed in you. That I really was hoping that you would be more present, that I would see the blessings. Ultimately, by the way, everything as we know, ultimately everything Hashem does is a blessing, is ultimately good. And from our physical eyes, we often don't see that it's good. So we pray to Hashem, that we should always see the good of what He's doing for us. But at the same time, if you feel that you're suffering, if you feel that you're hurting, I would say to dive into Hashem and say, listen, I really wish you would show me what's positive about what's going on here.
But they have no connection. They don't want, it's negative. So you're saying, fight it out, discuss it. But
so the choice is, so you're saying, well, you don't want to daven. Okay, so if you think that's going to solve the problem, then don't daven. But what I'm saying is, I think that ultimately, we know that we can't, that human beings are certainly more infallible than Hashem. I guess I would recommend maybe talk to your local Rav and say you're struggling, and let him know. Maybe he has a suggestion, because I assume he knows you better than what we're going to talk about in 5 minutes here.
Eliot, can I kick in for a second on the person who's struggling with Hashem?
Sure.
You said a really interesting point, that they should lay it all out and tell Hashem that they're disappointed, right? Which I'm sure raised some eyebrows from some people. Like, how can you tell Hashem you're disappointed in him? But I'd like to try to explain from a paradoxical position how that helps. The person who's struggling with Yiddishkeit, he's struggling with Hashem. So again, he's having two issues here. Number one, he's disappointed. Hashem didn't give him what he wishes he could have, or Hashem, dealt him a difficult set of cards. And that's one problem that he's having. The second problem that he's having is that he knows inside of himself that he can't be upset at Hashem, because everything Hashem does is for the good. So he's really struggling with two paradoxical pieces here. Number one, I'm upset at Hashem. Number two, I'm not allowed to be upset. Okay. If you instruct somebody to go tell Hashem that he feels upset at him, right? You've removed the second conflict. You're saying, no, tell Hashem you're upset at him. Hashem understands you. Hashem knows that you're human and that you're going to have feelings. He's the one who gave them to you. So go ahead and tell Hashem that you're upset at him. By doing that, you immediately remove the conflict that he's struggling with. He says, okay, now I could go speak to Hashem and sort of get it off my chest and tell him I'm upset. By doing that, he's less upset. He's less conflicted. He's less upset at Hashem because he's able to share that with Hashem, just like we would understand when somebody goes, to pay a Shiva visit, Rahman al-Aslan. There's nothing we could really say to make the person happy or to calm them down, right? But if we say to them, of course this is sad and it's disappointing, you lost a loved one. And that's the most difficult thing to experience. By doing so, they immediately develop a sense of calm and peace. They're still sad about what happened, but they're not conflicted about being sad.
Yeah. And by allowing yourself to say that you're disappointed, me as the therapist, I'm validating that's you're having a human feeling. This is I can understand why you would be disappointed, and you have a very difficult lifestyle, or you have very difficult things that you're going through. In other words, letting the person know that they're not alone, to a certain degree, the fact that we're with them.
Yes, and that's the same in when we prescribe symptoms. When we tell somebody, okay, go bicker your brother, we're essentially telling them the experience that you're having that's compelling you to bicker your sibling is a normal, acceptable, real, personal experience. To the degree that we're saying, go do it, you have to do it, go do it. And that calms them down, brings a sense of calm and peace.
Yeah.
Dr. Kaplan, let me ask you, overall, telling the person to actually do it, sometimes, telling them to do the wrong thing, does it ever backfire? They actually say, great, that's what I'm going to do, and they run with it, and they actually do what you suggest.
Right. Well, the reality is that ultimately, I try to make very clear to the person that they have a habitual pattern, that this is their habitual pattern. The way that I frame it is, in other words, I'm trying to challenge the client here. So I may say, listen, this is what again, we've tried CBT, we've tried psychodynamic, we've tried behavioral. Those straight arrow type of interventions have not worked. So now I'm going to plan B. Plan B is, okay, so let's plan that you're going to do it. Right now, by the way, if I'm working with a client who is doing something illegal, right? If I say, oh, robbing a bank, let's say, right? So, there are different ways that I kind of approach it, but one way is to say, listen, obviously, you've tried robbing banks before. You keep thinking about robbing. I tell you what. My personal advice, go rob a bank. Go rob a bank. Now, when you get arrested, because you will, when you get arrested again, and the cops come to me because you've told them, Dr. Kaplan told you to rob the bank, I'm telling you here and now, I don't know anything about it. I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm connecting with the client. In other words, I'm letting him know the reality of the situation. This is what you want to do. I'm going along for the ride. But you know what? If you're going to tell the police that Dr. Kaplan told you to do it, you know what? I don't know what you're talking about. I really have no idea.
Let's say, for example, he spends 4 hours watching till 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever, and then the next day he doesn't. He can't get up in the morning. So you recommend, continue watching, and he actually does.
Well, so sometimes what I ask myself is, what's the benefit? Well, why? So people do crazy behavior, right? And I ask myself, why would somebody do that crazy behavior? So let's say you're talking about somebody who stays up all night, can't get up in the morning, can't go to work. And, as I talked to him about the situation, it turns out that his mother gets angry. He was supposed to go to work, and his boss is calling him up, and his boss is calling his mother up, and he didn't show up again. So for the client, what I might say is, well, it seems to me that you need to get yelled at, right? You need to get yelled at. And to tell you the truth, I think as crazy as it sounds, I think you're doing your mother a favor. Because my concern is that if you started to getting to work on time, then your mother would have nothing to complain about with you, right? And she would get very bored. Your mom would get very bored. Now, I think my interpretation of this whole thing is I think you really do love your mother. And I think that part of loving your mother is to keep her busy. So in my mind, let's see, how can we keep your mom busy? Let's see, maybe you'll come home late at night. Nah, that's not good enough. Maybe you won't do well in school. Nah, that's not good enough. I got it. Why don't you just stay up all night and not get to work the next day? That'll get her upset, and you'll be doing her a favor. Now, again, from the client's perspective, this guy is crazy. This guy is nuts. What is he talking about, right? But in the meantime, so they do their whole thing. They get up late, they miss work, and now mom is yelling, okay? And as mom is yelling at them, the hope is that I'm standing next to him and I'm going, yeah, good job. You got mom to yell. Excellent, right? So you're keeping mom busy. So I'm trying to challenge him that if you get up on time, if you go to sleep a little earlier, then maybe you'll get to work. And now mom can't be, if mom is bored, mom is going to have to figure out on her own what to do, right? So I mean, it's sometimes the interventions are a little complicated, but they're usually interesting.
Gotcha.
Dr. I want to ask you one question. I want to just text me. It's actually a good question. Is there any tools people are listening tonight can use from this methodology besides going to therapy? Is there any way you could do this or anything part of this that you could take from tonight's program that somebody could help them? Not saying take it all the way and obviously, whatever, but is there something they could take from tonight that you could leave before we're going to go to closing, but I'm just before the closing that can we take away from tonight? Like if you have a difficulty with a certain thing, give yourself the permission to do that, even though you know that you need to work on it. Is that a fair statement? What could somebody take away tonight without going to you for the actual therapy?
Right. Part of the therapy is to get the person to kind of take a step back. I think Moshe Norman talked a little bit about this, where if you can observe yourself, in other words, sometimes what I'll do, even for myself, is like I'll challenge myself to do something, and then I want to watch the reaction of that other person. It's interesting. So I don't know, as a budding therapist, I remember as a kid, I would get into arguments with my father, and we'd go back and forth and back and forth. And just when I was just about to make my point, I was just about to get him, just about to make my point, my father would go, okay, you got all the answers. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And I would walk away and I'm like, but I wanted to make my point. I was just about to, right? But this happened once, this happened twice, it happened 3 times. And finally, I recognized the pattern. So I said, you know what? I have to do something that will disrupt the pattern, that will do something to shift the pattern. So the next time we got into this back and forth argument, like we're going back and forth and back and forth. And just when I figured he was just about to say that I had all the answers, I turned the tables and I said to my father, I said, you know what? You have all the answers. You're always going to do it the way you want. You have all the answers. I'm not arguing anymore. And my father had this surprised look on his face, like, what? So I guess what I'm saying is that if people can take a step back and watch the pattern that happens again and again and again between you and your spouse, or you and your kids, and to realize that as long as you're involved in the same pattern, as much as you want your kids to change, as much as you want your husband to change, The reality is that they're happy usually with you, the person, as long as you're picking up the slack, as long as you're going to give in. Why should he change? There's no reason for him to change. Now that doesn't mean to go, oh, now I'm going to do what I want. It means that, okay, he wants to go bowling, I want to go for a walk. You know what? You tell your husband, listen, I'm going to go out for a 10-minute walk. I'll be right back. But that's what I'm going to do right now. So it's not that you're doing out of revenge or out of spitefulness. You're doing it because it's something different. You're going to have a different response, and then you come back and you want to see, is your husband talking to you nicer? Is he how is he reacting? Just to see how that other person reacts when you do something different.
Okay, amazing. Okay, Dr. Eliot, let's go to the closing now. First, a great subscribe, Dr. Eliot Kaplan, for coming out tonight, giving a deep chizik and really understanding on this twisted paradox therapy concept. I'm definitely confused, but I think I got some clarity. I have to be very honest with you. I'm going to give you in my closing what I think. Yeah, that's the book, Eliot Kaplan, Paradox Psychology. You can buy it on Amazon.
Right.
And
it's not what you think. That's the name of the book. It's Paradox Psychology, Not What You Think, on Amazon. Sure. And
I'm sure when people return it, they're right, not as I thought it was. And thank you again for coming on. Again, anybody's here the first time, every Sunday night at 9:30. We have a different topic. Please spread the word. Mitzvah next week, January 7th, 2024, or on the last moments of 2023. Next week, we're going to have an amazing show with Reb Daniel Glatzin, who's a tremendous, brilliant Talmud Chacham. He speaks on so many topics with such deep insight. And the topic is going to be on Reb Meir Baal HaNes, the famous holy Tana. And his message is going to give over through the words of Reb Meir Baal HaNes, Hashem's infinite love for the Jewish people in today's day and age. It should be a very powerful topic, especially in what's going on today in the world. Please join us, let people know, and be part of it. Tonight's show, everything's recorded. I'm sure it'll be on menachemberfeld.com. If anyone has any questions, please email coachmenachem@gmail.com.
Yeah. Just let me say that my website is...
One second, I got you.
Okay.
To hear tonight's program on the phone, it's Share 169, and you can listen to all the programs over there. The number is 848-777-GROW. That's 848-777-4769. You can listen, obviously, to all Coach Menachem's podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and like a million other podcast things. Just search Coach Menachem Bergfeld. And thank you to all the advertising sponsors, the Liquid Scoop, Elinario, 510 Central, and Chayla Kaufman from Shmuel Summer and from JCN, the Jewish Content Network, always promoting us on all the digital platforms. So I'm going to say a closing, Menachem's going to say a closing, and Dr. Eliot, you'll give them, people want to know how they get a hold of you, how they can email you, where you exist. If you live in America, you know what I mean? Or you live in a paradox universe.
Paradox universe, yeah.
Right. So if there's a way to contact Mars, maybe they can get the book of the Starship. But my closing is that I think that what I'm taking out of tonight, and everybody could take it how they want, because some people are confused. That means the share was a success.
Yes.
Smash success. What I'm taking out of tonight, and this is my takeaway, is that at the end of the day, there is some commonality, but you're saying with a lot of different therapy points, but there's something very unique about it. I find that when you validate our behaviors instead of suppressing them, that gives us the freedom of free choice to try to really work on them versus you must do, because some people do react well with you must do, and they go through the steps. But like you said, they could do that and then they crash. And I've seen that many times in therapeutic sessions where people work together for a very long period of time and then things start backfiring. It's like the whole thing falls apart. I was once saw a therapy session for a long time with a client and a therapist, and the person did like something like they were working on for like over 2 years, and like they couldn't continue where they left off, whatever it was. I don't remember the specific topic, but he had such regression, and there was no way to rebuild that connection. And the therapist almost gave up on him. It was like, how could you do this? We've been working on this for such a long time. You're doing so well, and then you went back. I'm sure you see this with alcoholics and all these other things. It's a similar type of pattern. So I think the first thing that I'm seeing from tonight is just the permission, like Coach Menachem always says, to feel and to realize. Another thing that you're saying, which we've said many, many times, but I just want to reiterate that, is we have to always revisit our own behaviors and patterns, because as they always say, when you do the same thing and you get the same results, you're not getting anywhere. So if you're going to continue screaming at your kids will continue screaming at you, and you're going to continue going to your parent, and nothing is going to change. And we all know, one thing we learned from Coach Menachem after 169 shiurim in 4 years, the only thing that's going to change is you. nobody else is going to change. We're all on the same page with that. And anybody who's not, go listen to a different podcast, because this podcast is about getting the help, because nobody really changes for anybody, that we know very clearly. But the one thing that was interesting, it's a little bit different takeaway, at the end of the day, is that when a person gets the permission, especially from a therapist, that it's okay and plan it out and sort of be okay with it, that will give them the boost. And I know with anxiety specifically, even myself, like when you know that you're going to have an anxiety and you play it out and you know that it's okay to have it, I think paradox, therapy, this concept with anxiety would be a home run, because sometimes people are in a situation where they have to deal with anxiety and they try to run from it at all costs, but ultimately there's certain situations you can't run from it, right? If somebody has a problem going to their children's PTA or a wedding, at the end of the day, you have to go to a wedding, so you have to deal with it. But when you give yourself the permission, this is what I'm going to feel, this is what's going to happen, and you play the worst case scenario game, however you play it, but you're okay with it, you could heal from that probably quicker than versus trying to say, okay, when you go there, you're going to tell yourself this, this, and this, and you're going to write it down on a notes, and you're going to, because anxiety is the the biggest anxiety is the pre-anxiety. So I think that's very informative. And it sounds, the reason why people are having a hard time with this, because we're very used to problem solution. You understand? We're very used to A equals B. Over here, what I'm taking away, and I could be completely wrong, Menachem, tell me if I'm wrong, is that over here we're saying A equals A. It's not, there's no other answer. Continue, but what that's ending up having, what people are missing the little twist over here, is that when you're actually giving the permission and you're giving the person understanding that this is your behaviors, this is what you're doing, they're going to ultimately realize that they could overcome it and become better. Because usually when people are fighting or they're having marital issues, is because they're trying to prove their point that they're right and that they're this, and they're trying to prove their position. So the battle is always a theoretical, and they're going to prove their point to the death. Over here, when you're giving the person permission, you're not saying, Dr. Kaplan, you're not saying the person's right, and you're not saying that's the right way to be, but you're giving them the permission to continue with his thing. There's something internally inside, whether it's the neshama or the person wants to do the right thing, or it's your soul that talks to yourself and say, okay, I know this is something I could do, just like I know I could smoke drugs, just like I know I could, abuse my spouse. I know I could do it. And my therapist is saying, okay, this is your personality. Continue being, the person you are. That's sort of, I don't know if it's a spiritual thing or it's a internal thing, but it's helping the person self-soothe and heal, and giving him actually the other choice to say, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to try a different method. And I think that's what we're getting out of tonight. And people are having a hard time with that because they're not used to A equals A. They're used to A equals B. So that's my takeaway. And I think how I can apply it to myself is that when I deal with my own issues or my own things, is that I can give myself permission to understand that's where my struggles are, and it's normal for my struggles. And hopefully within time, and I want the chain cycle, whatever that struggle is, to change, that I make my micro steps to change it, that it will help eventually get out of that terrible habit of doing the same repetitive thing over and over and over again and getting the same results. So I think that's my personal takeaway. And if I got the whole share wrong, that's fine, because anyway, next year's a new year. In 20 minutes is a new year.
Right.
So Menachem, you give me your close, and then Dr. Eliot, listen, let's remember, we're giving you the time. We need contact information, number one, write it down, how to get a hold of you. And number three, we want to take away that every person that listens to this program will be able to infuse in their personal lives, whether they go to their therapy, whether or not, what they could do to take from tonight and to really help themselves accept themselves and get better and change and have a real meaningful impact on them. Okay, Coach Menachem.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Thank you, Dr. Kaplan. All I want to add is, like we started in the beginning, like what you mentioned, that if people are confused, where it's successful. Now, some people think it's a joke. Again, we're dealing with the brain, and it's beyond for us to understand really how it works. Therapy, we're trying different modalities. And tonight we heard another one, and this is actually something that Dr. Kaplan mentions, that you can actually see people change in front of you. It means with 1, 2, 3 sessions. So there's something there. And even if you didn't understand it fully, it's the beginning of something. And again, the brain is much bigger, much more than what we think. And it takes you to a place where you're not used to it, like we heard. And that's how it slowly helps a human like me to think different, see different, and eventually make changes. But it sounds like it's an amazing modality, and if it works, it works. And it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
for those who need it, and for those who feel they were in therapy for so long and not moved, here you go. Take the doctor's number, and the Menachem, everybody should be able to move, change whatever it needs. Sometimes it's something that we don't understand, and we see the change.
Okay, Dr. Eliot, let's go.
Yeah.
Contact information,
So-
how people get a hold of you, how people email you, how people harass you, your
Yeah,
home
yeah.
address, social security number, and then the closing that people could really take away, that could really get help. People are really texting me that they're finally getting the general concepts, and they feel that it's a fantastic different twist, and they don't know what to do with it, but they hear
Right.
you said, the brain is a little bit expanding.
Right.
Tonight.
Right. And that was really my intent is if you're walking away from this thinking, oh, I got this.
Contact information. Contact information.
Yeah, I'm getting
I give you permission not to listen to me.
Contact information. Okay. You can check my website is paradoxpsychology.com. My email is paradox.doc@gmail. My phone number and text number is 917-345-5750. And I guess in closing, I would just, I think with other therapies are usually about something. It's about somatic, it's about cognitive, it's about behavior, it's about something. And I think one of the difficult parts of and I think what I like about Paradox is I myself I'm always learning about it because it's a therapy about nothing. If you think about it, what did I do? Well, what did I get? What intervention did I say?
Well, the Seinfeld therapy.
It's Seinfeld, exactly. It's a therapy about nothing, right? So the only thing that I've done is I give people permission, and in giving people permission, it's like I join them. And my intent, and this is my entire intent of the therapy that I do, is so that when that person walks out, that they're not walking out alone, that they feel that they're with somebody, and that when that repetitive situation comes up, that there's, whether it's conscious or unconscious, by the way, there's a part of them that feels, wow, like I've been here before, and I know what's going on, and I'm going to react differently this time. So I think that that's what's exciting about Paradox, and it's a very here and now method. And I guess to just leave people with the understanding that while most therapy talks about the finite part of the person, the body, the thinking, the emotions, Paradox is really geared toward that infinite part of the person, which is more related to attachment and bonding, which is kind of, because you can attach to an infinite amount of people, and it's just an incredible approach.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kaplan. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope everybody listens to this a few times and does more research. It was a beautiful program. Dr. Kaplan, I hope we didn't do such difficult surgery on you, but this is what we do. We try to really hope you're okay.
You should have told me ahead of time.
No, that's the point. I'm giving you permission to feel.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed presenting, and I hope that people got something from it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and everybody should have a wonderful holiday weekend. And hopefully we'll see you next week with Rabbi Daniel Gladstein, same time, same place. And everybody have a great night. Thank you very much for joining.